All right, welcome to the Phil Streams cast with myself, Ethan, and we have our esteemed Arkansas luminary, Dargan Ware, here. As you can
Nice to
see,
be
my
here.
my title for best facial hair is obviously I'm in second place for this cast. So just wanted to do a quick recap with of the Florida and Arkansas game. Um, it was a great showing by the Florida offense again. I'm very excited that we got to play Arkansas this year because Felipe Franks, Philip Hotdogs, as he's called by parts of the Gator Nation. Yeah, for me personally, he is one of the all-time favorite Gators for me. He made a lot of very questionable decisions. There's a lot of hate from the Gator Nation for him, but he was a Gator through and through, and he clearly played for his team every snap, every down. I hated to see the way that his time with us ended because he had a lot of promise last year, but really glad to see that he's landed in a really good spot with Arkansas. Dargan, you want to touch on some of the stuff you saw during the game?
Sure. We'll start with Felipe and just say that I think that he'll have a special place in a lot of Hog fans' hearts if we can get this thing going. And I think Sam Pittman has a very good chance of returning us to being competitive in just about every game we play, and that's all we can really ask for. And if Felipe starts us down that path, I think he'll be remembered by a lot of Hog fans very highly. And because he probably had a lot of other choices when he left Florida, and he chose to come to Arkansas. And he'll only get 1 year with us, but he's making the most of it, I think, and he's doing a great job.
Yeah, and kind of to touch back on the Sam Pittman hire. When Arkansas got him away from Georgia, I immediately felt like that was the best hire in the SEC last year. And then you add on top of that the fact that he went out and got Kendall Briles, who I think maybe enough time has passed that he's shaken away some of the Baylor demons. And then Barry Odom from Missouri,
Right.
who anytime you can get a relatively successful SEC head coach to come in and be one of your coordinators, I call that a success. And then to top it all off, everybody knows, and if they don't, they need to start learning offensive line coaches make the best head coaches, because there is no other position in football that requires essentially a mini team to work on one page.
Yep.
And the head coach can expand that to the rest of the team. And I'm blown away with how well Arkansas has played this year. Especially coming off of what was it, a 20-some-odd game SEC losing streak or something?
20 games, 20 straight SEC losses. But more than that, I mean, we could have lost 20 straight SEC games and not looked nearly as terrible as we had the last 3 years. We got blown out at home by North Texas, by Western Kentucky with a quarterback we ran off. We were really, really bad. I mean, there was a good case to be made that last year and the year before we were the worst team in a major conference, right? We might have been able to keep it close with Rutgers and Kansas.
That's not what you want to. That's not what you want to hang your head on.
Exactly. I mean, we were quite possibly literally the worst team in major college football for 2 years in a row.
So I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt it, but I don't get the chance to pick the brain of a Razorback fan very often here in the Panhandle of Florida, mostly Seminoles and Alabama and all the other Cretans. Sure. So where just kind of rewind things a little bit. Where do you think went wrong under Bert Bielema?
Well, I really liked the Bielema hire when it happened, right? Because line coaches generally, and he was a defensive line coach for a lot of years, but as you said, are pretty solid, and he was a proven winner. It seemed like the best we could get for sure. and he was just too, I guess, dogmatic in what he wanted to do, and he just couldn't get the players.
And it was always weird because it seemed like it went from, you had Alex Williams and Alex Collins, Alex Williams.
Yep.
You had these stud running backs. You had this massive offensive line, and you guys were playing Belima ball. And it was, it took a couple of years after Petrino to kind of cement what he wanted to do. And then it seemed like you guys were doing it really, really well. And
for about a year and a half.
Yeah, for about a year and a half. And then like the wheels just fell off. And it was, either you could run it down their throats, but you couldn't play defense, or you were airing it out. And who was the offensive coordinator? I forget. Was it Enos?
Yes, Dan Enos from who had been a head coach at Central Michigan.
Yeah.
And again, it seemed like a decent head coach coming in as a coordinator seemed like a solid hire.
Yeah. So I'm really happy to see Arkansas back, and I'm not going to say you guys are back, but it seems like you're on the verge of getting the pieces together. That was the thing that, to me, as a Florida fan, we had Muschamp and we had McElwain. The forgotten years of Florida football, really. And we had the pieces, but it seemed like we never had the if it's a puzzle, if winning the football game is a puzzle, we had the pieces, but we didn't have the nice, pretty picture that showed us where those pieces go. And you were just constantly churning through these guys that it's like, hey, how do we have 4 first-round picks, but we went 7-5? How to, and now, it seems like, at least with Arkansas and, Florida, thankfully we've had a couple of years with Mullen to get this thing going again. But with Arkansas, it seems like you guys now have that picture of what Sam Pittman and Barry Odom and Kendall Briles are going to want. And now it's just plugging those pieces in, which is just a matter of time.
It definitely seems like, we have the strategic vision that was absent. But the pieces, I'm not sure. Last year, Cheyenne O'Grady was the only guy on our team that could have made the team at another SEC school. Maybe the kicker, maybe Limbert. I mean, we just didn't have the players last year, and the last, say, 4 years, it just seemed to get worse and worse player wise. And I don't know, Brett didn't do a great job of recruiting toward the end, and I don't know what the deal was with Chad Morris. He just, I knew there
was a gap. No offense, Dargan. I knew there was a gap between Brett Belima and Sam Pittman, but in my mind, I just could not figure out what that missing piece was. And I was like, I know Sam Pittman didn't replace Brett Belima. Was it an interim? And then when you said Chad Morris, it clicked. I was like, oh, that's
Chad Morris.
Okay.
And who is now the offensive coordinator at Auburn, and isn't doing a terrible job, it seems. So the first week my wife's a huge Auburn fan. The first week I was watching the Auburn game, and I don't remember which commentator it was, but they were talking about it. This looks like a Chad Morris offense, and I'm like, no, it doesn't. There's not nearly enough interceptions.
The Chad Morris hire really reminded me a lot of Gene Chizik, to where it's like, oh, he was a good coordinator. He's gone off as a head coach, and he's had some seasons. He wasn't really particularly good at a lower level of competition, and then it's like, oh, hey, here comes the SEC. And, luckily for Gene Chizik, he walked into a Gus Malzahn Cam Newton combo. Unfortunately for Chad Morris, there was no Cam Newton on that.
Chad Morris brought Ben Hicks with him.
Yes, exactly.
There were like posters I saw in Arkansas and people putting some on the internet and said things like, Ben Hicks is the returning quarterback of the SEC with the most yards. And, ridiculous statements that were theoretically true. It was completely ridiculous, and proved to be ridiculous. But it's amazing how far generally we fell after Petrino. When I graduated from Arkansas in 1999, we were a top 20 all-time program in wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we're like 38, right? How do you drop that far in 20 years?
Man, that's brutal.
It's just really, really bad. And it happened in basketball at the same time, which also was really bad for us, So
you're that time frame. It does kind of coincide with when Arkansas, was added to the SEC.
mm-hmm.
Is there some sort of cultural difference there that when they went from the Big Eight, the Southwest Conference, to the SEC West, to where you went from being one of 8 or 10 teams in this sort of, that North Texas, Ozark area that made up a lot of those Big Eight Southwest Conference
mm-hmm.
teams.
We were never actually in the Big Eight.
Oh, excuse me, but the region at least.
Right, sure. You know what? The teams were just better,
mm-hmm.
right? The competition was better, but we didn't slip in that until sort of the mid 2000s, right? Okay. The first 10 years that we were in the SEC, we weren't winning national championships, but we were winning 8, 9, 10 games a year every year, and it's just I don't know. I don't really know what happened, but when Bobby Petrino wrecked that motorcycle, it's just the world went to hell. I mean,
I wish I would have had that picture ready to go when we started talking about it. Bobby Petrino, he does seem to have a knack for bringing programs to places that they didn't think they could go. And also, that works in both directions, to where he's taken multiple FBS programs to highs and multiple FBS programs to lows.
And we did, the only time we've ever played in a BCS game, which obviously don't exist anymore, was under Petrino, because we won a lot of big games before the FBS system. We won the Orange Bowl a couple of times. We won the Cotton Bowl, 20, 30 times. Because that was the SWC championship or champions bowl game. The other thing that I always bring up in any SEC discussion with people is that do not ever let Alabama tell you that they won the 1964 national championship.
Let me make a note of that.
The rest of those.
I'm loading up my sticky notes. Bama did not win 1964. Got it. All right. It is marked down, and I will pull some strings to see if I can get the Alabama record keepers to alter their books a little bit.
Yeah. Because they got destroyed in a bowl game by a team that we beat. And after the bowl games, we were the only undefeated team.
Well, you're the champion in my mind, then. That's all.
Yeah.
Bama doesn't need another one.
Yeah, and that's the only one we got. So, yeah.
So, like we were saying before we started, my little personal anecdote, my personal connection to Arkansas. When I was in high school, I got to go on a recruiting trip to Ole Miss, and got to meet Ed Orgeron and the Ole Miss staff, and all, walk through the Grove and all that stuff. And it was a cool experience. But this was, I believe, 2008, and it was Arkansas at Ole Miss. And Arkansas proceeded to put a beatdown of historic fashion on Ole Miss. And it was Felix Jones and Darren McFadden. Yep. And they both had about 150 yards rushing apiece. I think the final score was like 49-3 or something along those lines. And ever since that day, I've always, had sort of a rooting passion for Arkansas when we weren't playing you guys. Yeah. And it seemed like a lot of the times to where Florida was in the SEC championship game, if we weren't playing Alabama, it seems like we were always playing Arkansas.
There were a couple.
Yeah, there were a couple there, and it seemed like Arkansas, they had to get over that hump of Florida in the SEC title game, and thankfully for me, you guys couldn't quite get over that hump, but it was always a nail biter. It was always close.
If Madre Hill doesn't blow out his knee third play of the game in '94. Maybe we make that one competitive.
Yeah.
But I was at that game, by the way.
Florida, for what it's worth, we've had a few instances. In the '06 national championship game, we had Ted Ginn Jr. return the opening kickoff for a touchdown, and then proceed to injure himself celebrating or after the kick or what, and he missed the rest of the game. I don't think that would have made up the 30 points that Ohio State defense let us have, but you take somebody's best player off the field, and you never know what's going to happen.
Yep.
So I want to now kind of give my Gators a little bit of love. Not sure if you noticed, but the Dogs, they dodged us last week. They decided to do their own show without the Gators around, so that they could do a thorough postmortem of that cocktail party. We'll leave that dog dead because it was thoroughly beaten. And I want to come over to the Razorbacks. I think Felipe, he probably had a little bit of inside knowledge, but he exposed, and this is something that Felipe failed to do and led to a lot of anguish amongst our fan base. He failed to expose the gaps. And by that, I mean, you watch our game, and there was at least 3 plays. One of them turned into a touchdown, but there was one play, it was a 4th and 1, that Felipe, he threw it short. It was an RPO, and he should have thrown it to the guy on the wheel route.
Yep, Traylon Burks.
Yep,
wide open.
And he would have walked into the end zone.
Yep.
Hey, when you got people in your face, and it's 4th and 1, high pressure situation, it's a lot easier to say, "Oh my God, he's wide open," than it is to actually do it. But
I believe they could have launched that ball straight up in the air, and Traylon could run under it anywhere on the field.
Yep.
There was nobody close to him.
And then the first touchdown that you guys had, it was an 83-yard run. It was a zone read or some kind of mesh play to where Felipe has to decide, does he want to hand it or keep it or throw it. Handed it off. Our safety decided that he wanted to tackle your offensive lineman instead of the guy with the ball, and your running back cracked his head on the goalpost from 80 yards out.
The play that Rakeem Boyd scored on later was just 10 or 12 yards, but it was the exact same play.
Yep.
And he could have run all the way down the field too.
And that's the thing. Our defense is much maligned, but ultimately, you look at a team like Missouri. Missouri didn't take advantage of those opportunities. Those poor eye discipline. The do I give it or do I keep it? Sometimes they'd make the wrong decision. It seemed like Arkansas really made the right decision in almost every situation on offense. Right. And, for a first-year quarterback, for a new coach, and your head coach wasn't even there, So there was a lot of things. Right. I'm a Florida fan. I came away very impressed because Arkansas's defense, all I heard was Arkansas's defense is the best in the SEC. And from everything I saw, it seemed like you guys were, or at least amongst the top 3 or so.
Well, okay, so we out-schemed a lot of people on defense before this game, right? I remember a post I made on Facebook after the Ole Miss game was that the reason we'd won, one very good reason we'd won 2 SEC games was that both Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin were psychologically incapable of running it down our throats.
Yep.
Right? They had to try to pass. And Odom just baited them into it. And we just kept intercepting it. Right? And it was all scheme. Right? And, our scheme wasn't bad against Florida either. We did make a couple of really stupid mistakes.
Yeah.
Where we just, let people wide open. But it wasn't, we never had the most talented defense in the world. The guy leading that defense or the secondary is a walk-on who probably wouldn't have made the team anywhere else in the SEC.
Hey, I believe it was against Missouri. We had a walk-on that played from the second quarter on, at Florida.
Right. Hudson Clark is, like I say, brilliant. And
we have. Let me pop this up we got Mitch here who decides that he wants to clarify that they're not the Dodgers. So we will have to take that one up off stream. And we will have to schedule a thorough dissection of the cocktail party. Yeah, sometimes schedules are a little tough to get, but we're not going to let Mitch take over our Arkansas Florida fun time here.
Very good.
But to go back to it, at least 3 of our touchdowns, it seemed like Arkansas was just a half a step away from stopping it. We had the one where Jacob Copeland caught the touchdown. It was about a 30-yarder, and Trask, you see him pointing to the end zone. On that play, the receiver that ran the out route, the safety bit up on it, but he bit up on it and immediately started going back. And to me, that's a sign of solid coaching because dude, it's hard to stop these offenses. And, especially when you have a guy like Trask who's facilitating everything. And to have a defensive player see his mistake and then immediately go to rectify it and know, if he maybe, and kind of going back to the talent thing, maybe if he's a couple inches taller or a couple inches taller, maybe he's a 4'4" instead of a 4'5". Yeah. maybe we have our luminaries from the other teams are cracking me up here. but maybe if he's a 4'4" instead of 4'5" guy, maybe he gets there. Yeah. And that's one of the things that, to me, as somebody who has seen teams have to go through a rebuild, that's encouraging because the next time it happens, that guy is going to mentally be ready for it, and he won't have to rely on the physical aspects of it.
Right. And, our defense, I think, played very hard. I think they made some mistakes, but I think they're very well coached. And, coming into this season, I think a lot of people thought, we were just going to get blown off the field most days on defense. And instead, we've had a lot of success. And, that didn't obviously extend to stopping Florida's offense.
Yeah.
But Florida's offense is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And I looked at it. There were, I think, 4 possessions that you guys didn't score a touchdown. One each of being stopped on downs, a turnover, or
an interception by our third-string quarterback.
Yeah. An interception and a turnover on downs, and one of them, and then at the end of the game. But it just you guys only punted one time.
Yep.
So I think we were outmatched, but we gave it a pretty good showing. And there were a lot of games the past few years where we would have got down 21-7, say, and it was done, and it was 56-7 without anybody really trying.
Yep.
In this game, yes, we gave up a lot of points, but we also kept things interesting.
Yeah, y'all scored a lot of points. Admittedly, the game was pretty far out of hand for a lot of it, and that's where you really but to me that's where you really see what your team is. That's when you're down 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, when you see guys hanging their head, when you see guys yelling at each other, when you see guys loafing around on an end around, that's when you're like, oh, these guys aren't invested, they don't care. And to me, the whole game, to harp back to it, Georgia, admittedly they were down about half their team by the second half of the game, but it didn't. It seemed like not only did the players want that game to be over, all the fans wanted it to be over. The coach, everybody just wanted it to be over. Yeah. It seemed like Arkansas came into the swamp and needed to, they wanted to show not just to themselves, to the opponents. They want to show to everybody, hey, we're done with this. This mentality is going to be swept out of our program.
And so that pass that Franks missed on 4th down, I think it was still 7-7 if I'm remembering correctly. And if we take the lead there, last year we screwed that up, and the final score is 56-7 because we never come back from it. This year, if we had hit that, there's at least some possibility that this is a close game at the end. I still think you guys win, but if we hit that and one or two other plays,
I mean, we've shown so far, if you want to beat Florida, keep up with them on offense. I mean, that's really all it is. And we've shown we can't really stop anybody. Thankfully for us, Alabama, LSU, they've also shown that they can't stop anybody this year. Looking at the rest of our schedule, there's nobody else. We have Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Kentucky. There's no real fear left on our schedule. So it's one of those things to where, for me as a Florida fan, I'm looking to see if we can have that mentality. If we can have that, okay, this team came out and punched us in the mouth. We're on the mat. Do we want to get back up, or are we just going to roll over because things aren't going our way? For the past, for a lot of the past 10 years, that's how our teams have responded. And it's that kind of, everybody always talks about the locker room culture and all these things. It's a real thing. And that all starts with coaching. That's, to me, you can talk about scheme and recruiting and all these things. That, to me, as a fan, is how you determine what kind of coach you have on your team. And it's oh man, these super geniuses think that they can prognosticate, but man, they seem thoroughly confused here. But I kind of want to just pick your brain a little bit. Maybe 5 minutes or so. Because again, it's a rare feat that I get to talk to an Arkansas fan. What is your perception of Dan Mullen as a someone who used to deal with him in the SEC West? What do you think about him?
I've always liked Mullen. I've never really had any problems with him. I was a little taken aback by the whole when he was the whole thing at the end of the Missouri, or the half in Missouri, or I guess it was at was it the swamp, or was it?
It was in the swamp.
Yeah, and I mean, he did seem like he was instigating something, at least for a second, and then I think he figured out that he shouldn't be doing that. He seems like a very hyped up guy, and I think the players really like him, and he's going to stand up for them. And I think he does. He's good at offensive schemes. I do wonder. You always wonder when you have a head coach who is an offensive guy and you don't have a very good defense. You wonder if the offense is somehow contributing to the defense not being very good, or if there's some sort of focus problem, right? And so you wonder, but at Mississippi State, he has a pretty great defense.
And the past 2 years, our defenses have been really solid, top 20. Sure. It seems like this year, I don't know if it's because of the effect of 2020 and everybody having. I personally, within the first couple of weeks of the season, I saw a lot of people talk about the defenses in the SEC. It's much easier to install an offense and dictate a game through offense than it is through defense. Defense requires all 11 people to be on the same page at all times. And if you make one mistake, it's a touchdown. On offense, somebody runs the wrong route, you can run a pit. You might throw a pit. There's things that can happen, but you get to dictate where the ball is going. And on defense, you have to respond to that.
Defense rarely. What happened in the Arkansas Mississippi State and Arkansas Ole Miss games rarely happens. You don't see defenses just sort of out scheme and out coach offenses very often. Happens all the time with offenses where they're roughly equal in talent, and somebody calls a great game, and the team gets out schemed. That doesn't happen on defense very often, but it did, I think, definitely against Mississippi State. I think, and I'm not sure how much of that. There were a lot of other things going on at Ole Miss. How do you let somebody throw 6 interceptions?
Yeah.
I said the same. Chad Morris let what's his name from A&M, Starkle throw 7 interceptions in the game. But
Poor guy, Starkle. Yeah, there's a.
yeah,
I won't besmirch Starkle's name. We'll leave that to Tate Martell. And if you haven't seen the Tate Martell and Nick Starkle exchange, it's worth looking up. But yeah, he to me, everybody always says defense wins championships, and there's probably some validity to that. I think 2020 is the year that it's game to game. Everybody is going game to game, and because Florida's biggest weakness on defense is our safeties. In my opinion, some people may disagree. Mm-hmm. We have our entire safety rotation has 4 guys who, like you were saying about Arkansas, they probably wouldn't play on many other SEC teams. It's just a position we haven't been able to get fixed. In pretty much every single game that we've played, it's been a breakdown by a safety that has led to an 80-yard touchdown, just like we were talking about, Yeah. And that's the difference in this season versus pretty much any other season is I think every game, you don't know what personnel you're going to have. You don't know what personnel the other team is going to have. Right. And on offense, it's much easier to adapt to your starting wide receiver being out than it is on defense to have your starting corner out or your starting safety out. Because then you have guys come in who just they're all on the same page. And it takes one screw up on defense. We saw it twice against Arkansas. It takes one screw up, and it's a touchdown. It takes it to the house. And so I think offense is the name of the game this year, and defense is kind of meaningless to us. I don't think anybody's going to stop it.
I mean, you guys in Bama may play a 77-70
I was wondering, if we do make it to Atlanta to face each other, what's the over-under going to be on that game? It's going to have to be like 90, right? I mean, there's no way that either one of us are going to stop each other.
I'm still taking the over. I mean, it's defense is tough this year for sure.
Yes.
But who knows? I mean, Bama has to come to Fayetteville. I think.
Hey, man, you never know. Like it only takes. I've seen crazier things happen than this Arkansas team beat this Alabama team. And all Notre Dame just took down Clemson. Yep. You sub Trevor Lawrence in for that game, we're talking about probably a totally different outcome. But
I don't know, man. I mean, you really gonna blame the?
No, I'm not. I don't blame. I think that was a great game. I just think that was a great college football game, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
I mean, the backup threw for 450 yards.
Exactly. And that's but it's one of those things to where you never really. It's hard to really quantify the impact that a team's best player has on all facets of the game.
Sure. I mean, maybe it's a different game psychologically for him.
But I mean, Notre Dame, they 47-41. Trevor Lawrence didn't suiting up at linebacker, so it's not.
Yep.
But for us, Kyle Trask goes down. Knock on wood. Who knows what's going to happen with us?
So have you seen the meme out there with Kyle Trask and Trevor Lawrence with their hairstyles switched?
I have not.
Look that up sometime.
Well, let me see if I can find this.
Kyle Trask is a very pretty man with Trevor Lawrence's hair.
Oh. Okay, yeah, here we go. Let's see. No, that's not it. I will have to look this up. We'll have to pull this up on our next one. But that's unfortunately
the top 2 Heisman candidates.
How is Trevor Lawrence still a Heisman candidate? Is what I don't. I feel like in this season, if you miss a game, I feel like when you're already playing 8 games, 10 games. If you miss a game, I feel like it's kind of you kind of have to.
Games, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, because when they showed the statistics, Kyle Trask, he had I think it's around 2,300 yards passing, 28 touchdowns, 3 picks, 70% completion percentage in 6 games. The only person that was even close, they had Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson from BYU up there. Who else am I forgetting? I think that was about it. And Justin Fields from Ohio State.
Yeah.
Michael Penix Jr. does deserve to be in consideration. The big lefty, as a lefty myself, anytime I see a southpaw doing God's work out there, I'm always going to root for him.
If they beat Ohio State,
yeah. If non-Windiana goes in there and beats Ohio State, Michael Penix Jr., we'll just crown him then. Sorry, I was brain farting there. Yeah. Yeah, but unfortunately for us, Dargan, we don't have a lot of football to talk about besides our game because half the SEC was canceled and we were left with not very interesting football this past weekend except for our games. But is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
I was gonna ask you whether you thought Trask had an inside shot at the Heisman.
Dude, Trask, I am so glad that you gave me this soapbox, Dark. What you just teed me up there. If Trask is not number one on everybody's Heisman front runner list, they're watching different games than I am. He has not had a single bad performance. He is single-handedly carrying one of the top 5 offenses in football.
I'm not sure he had more than one bad throw last night.
Yeah, there was one. There was one. I do remember one where Dan Orlovsky was like, I don't know about that one. And I do want to say, against Georgia in pretty much the whole second half, we were so far ahead and their offense was so inept that I wanted to just see us run the clock out. And that was something that drove me crazy under McElwain, is if we were up 24-10 at halftime, he comes out and it's run. Oh, they stopped us? Well, now we punt. Oh, now it's 24-17. Run. And now it's 24-24, and you're like, hey, dude, you can't just eat the ball for the entire second half. You have to. You can do it for the last 6 minutes of the game, maybe, but you can't just run the ball to run it.
Right.
Dan Mullen, I've had that opposite thing to where it's like, against Georgia, we threw a little bubble screen that was about the defender was about half a yard away from picking it and taking it to the house. We saw similar things against you guys to where we were up 3 touchdowns, but we were still airing the ball out. Yeah. And it's like, I don't think he's doing it to run the score up, but that's how we move the ball. And it's one of those things to where we got to find a way to fix that, because you can't throw risky passes up to 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter.
So random interesting stat here. Arkansas and Florida each had 208 yards rushing.
Really? I was looking at the stats before we started and saw we had 208. And that's one thing for me as a Florida fan. Seeing Emory Jones, I messaged Mitch during the cocktail party. At least 3 to 4 times a game, Emory Jones comes in. He's our backup quarterback. If you remember during the cast, he's the highest rated recruit at quarterback that Dan Mullen has ever signed as head coach. I think he is a very promising quarterback. He's going to be our starter next year. Yeah, he's the guy next year. But unfortunately, in my opinion, it's not next year yet. So when we get down to the 20-yard line, and then our quarterback that's 6 for 6 for 75 yards, and he's just driven us down the field, you pull out your horse and you put in your backup to run 2 quarterback draws. Why? I just that every game it's like that, and there have been times where Emory Jones has just gotten way too cute, and he's done his little, they fake the quarterback draw, and then they lean back, and then he throws an arm punt, and you're just like, wait, no, you threw a 30-yard pick. Why either run the quarterback draw, throw a smart pass, or don't put the backup in?
Right.
And that's what Dan Mullen's offense is you got to get that quarterback running. And thankfully, he's smart enough not to get Kyle Trask into that situation. He did it with Felipe a little bit. Felipe is much more athletic than Trask is, though.
Yeah, I mean, Felipe can run around fairly well, and he's not Matt Jones back there.
Well, he maybe if he got a little boost, Matt Jones could probably help him with that, right?
Yeah, probably so. Matt Jones is literally my favorite player of all time, by the way.
Oh, dude, when he went to the
Um,
Jags, I knew. When he came to Duval County, I'm like, this poor boy, he had so much promise, and they sent him to the one place in the
yeah,
NFL that his problems are guaranteed to get worse.
yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. But yeah, I think you guys, I think will be fine at quarterback next year. I think we've still got a lot to learn. I KJ's okay. KJ Jefferson, our first backup, and after that, we randomly put, I don't even remember the kid's name. We randomly put somebody else in at the goal line against Auburn, and he didn't get anywhere. And that's literally the only
Oh,
play he has been in all season, and it cost us a touchdown. And I have no
jeez.
idea what was going on there. Um, but yeah, we'll I think the big test for Sam Pittman and the momentum that we're going to have coming out of the season, which I think is going to be pretty good. Even if we don't, upset Alabama or pull anything big in the next, few weeks. Um, the big test is who's going to play quarterback next year.
Mm-hmm.
And we got sort of very lucky in having Felipe transfer in this year. So I think we'll be all right. I really like our coaching staff for sure. I don't know. I don't think anybody's going to touch Kendall Browse for a while, which is probably going to help us.
Yeah, that was going to be a question I was going to ask you. Is that's sort of the caveat with hiring former head coaches as your coordinator?
Yep.
Is it leads to some churn sometimes to where those guys immediately bolt for a head coach? Do you see that as a possibility with Barry, or do you think he's around for at least 2 or 3 more seasons?
Well, I don't know him real well or his history or anything real well, but I don't know that he thinks he's he's been around a while, and
Mm-hmm.
the chance of him getting a shot at another SEC school in 2 or 3 years is probably pretty low. We'd have to be real good before he could get an SEC level job. So the question is, does he want to go somewhere else, somewhere at a lower level, just to be head coach, right? And I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't know anymore.
For me personally, I feel like the real nail in the coffin for Florida's resurgence, our lost decade, whatever you want to call it, was Will Muschamp's first offensive coordinator hire, Charlie Weiss. Florida fans were ecstatic, but when he immediately left, even before the bowl game, to go and coach at Kansas, it created that cycle to where we went with Brett Peace from Boise State, and he had a good year. Next year was terrible, and then we bring in Kurt Roper from Duke, and we looked okay, but by that point it was too late. Then you bring in McElwain, and he's supposed to be this offensive guy, and he never got it figured out. And then that he never got he stuck with Doug Nussmeier for whatever reason. Doug Nussmeier, have you looked at his resume, Dargan?
I have not. What is
this man? This man. He is the anti Lane Kiffin. Let's put it that way. Lane Kiffin failed his way upwards thanks to who his dad was, but also because he had some exciting, some interesting offensive components. Doug Nussmeier has been the offensive coordinator at the University of Alabama, the University of Michigan, the University of Florida, and none of their offenses were ever above 90th. Now, you would think that someone who has coached at 3 of the 10 or so best, top 20, whatever, schools in the country would have some chops. But it appears that he has finally been buried out back, and the stench of Doug Nussmeier will no longer affect our glorious universities, because I don't think that he's doing much anymore these days.
I wonder where I was going to ask you. Do you know where he is this year?
Looks like the last time he coached was in 2018 as an offensive analyst for LSU.
All right.
Oh no! Oh, even better. He is the quarterbacks coach for the Dallas Cowboys.
No way. No way. So you're talking about Lane Kiffin failing upwards.
Failing upwards. He is a coach on the Dallas Cowboys after doing nothing. His entire career, none of his teams have ever been good. And somehow he's the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys.
If he turns Ben DiNucci into a star.
Yes, there you go. There you go. He denounced us.
Yeah. The other just random thought I have to talk football generally is anybody going to touch Hugh Freeze if Liberty?
Yes. I'm not sure who. Depends on, I guess, how Auburn finishes their season. I could definitely see it's going to have to be maybe South Carolina. I think it's going to have to be a big boy. I think they're going to have to be a Power 5 conference coming off of some very, very unmet expectations. And maybe USC. I mean, I think Hugh Freeze is one of the 20 best coaches in college.
Michigan?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to have to be a fan base that is rabid enough to hold their nose and drink the medicine. And, FSU did it with Kendall Briles last year. And everybody was kind of like, "Ugh, what, Kendall Briles?"
Yeah.
Time has gone on. Kendall Briles also has that, hey, it wasn't me, it was my dad. I'm guilty by association. Yeah, I'm guilty by association, but it's not like you had my burner phone. It's not like Hugh Freeze has that sanctimonious, thank God that we have all these things going our way. All glory to God. And then turns around and calls a prostitute. And, that's something that's hard for a lot of people, especially in the South, to stomach. The good thing is there's also a lot of people who are blindly ignorant of all of these inner workings of college football who will just say, I want to see W's, and let's be real here. Most fans of most teams fall into that category.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what's going to end up happening.
Well, there were a few people upset that Arkansas hired Kendall Briles.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't have gone out and wanted him. I wasn't hoping we hired him. But, like you say, it was his dad, not just him.
Yeah.
And, imagine being in that position of, you're not only a subordinate coach, but this is your father.
Yep.
It's going to be pretty hard to stand up and say, look, this is wrong, guys.
Yep.
So
Yes, he does. He fits right in with the Falwells. Our super genius has some hot takes. I love it. All right, Dargan. Well, I think that's going to be about it for me tonight, man. It's been an absolute blast. I know we could probably talk for another hour. Hopefully you can join us again soon. I know Arkansas, me and haven't had a chance to interact with you guys too much. So, if you ever want to join us for a stream and just talk some college football, feel free to shoot me a message and we can definitely make that happen.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right, man. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and you have a good week.
You too.
All right. See you, Phil Stream Station.